Right. So hopefully by now you have finished scraping. So I've finished scraping all the sides down this way on the back, on the butt. Flip it over all of this edge. Now you're working on trying to bring down the little area on the front, on the back. So I'm going to show you some things you can do for that. Easy way to go about it. Let's see. Let's get down like this. Maybe. All right. So I've got two things here. I have a very small plane, and I have my scraper. Now, I know that in this area I have about 1.5 millimeters or so, and the easiest way for me to do that is to just very lightly go along my edge, pull my plane, and I don't know if I'm going to have a good angle on this or not, one way or the other, just to remove some of the really tall stuff. And I'm kind of angling the plane just slightly, ever so slightly away from the guitar, because I don't want to mar the surface, and I'm going to bevel the binding anyway. And so my first operation is to remove some of the really tall excess with the little plane. Once I've done that, then I can take my scraper and go along the grain direction of the back here, as it were. Again, keeping a slight angle as I go, and I'll back up a little bit. So I'm keeping a slight angle just to make sure that that binding is now level with the back. Okay. Now, let's do this one right here. This would be a good spot. All right. Once our binding is level, you'll notice right in this area. So I'm going to go ahead and raise this up a little bit. Come back in. The other way. I've got a little gap right here. I don't know if you can see it. Just a small gap. Okay, now, to make sure I can keep this on the camera here. Yeah. So it's right here. This is a lumber marking. That'll come off when I get ready to actually do my actual sanding. So I'm going to show you a little trick. If you've got, after you have scraped your binding, now everything is level, and if you have a small gap like that, what you can do, and I have, this is Gorilla Super Glue, and it's probably a little thicker than is really necessary. I'm just going to put a little bit right into my gap, and then I'm going to take a piece of used sandpaper. In this case I have used 220 grit that I used on something else. And I'm going to start with a little bit of sanding, and I'm going to get a little bit of sanding wood dust in there, and I'm just going to work along that spot and fill that gap. Okay, so here's my gap. If I get my camera to focus now. So where there was a gap, there's now nothing. Now, this does not work on the top, so if you've got an issue on the top, you have a problem. But once you're done scraping the binding on the sides and the back, go back for those small gaps and use some, in my case, super glue works pretty good. I believe you could use hide glue. I haven't tried that yet, but I'm sure it would work just fine. It will leave a little bit mark, but after you've sanded and pour filled, it should disappear pretty much. So, okay. So now that we have finished scraping the binding all the way around the guitar, and now we're just working on clearing up the grain. We're doing some really light sanding, some finish sanding, as if you will, and I'm getting ready to seal the top and put a seal coat on the binding so that I can do my pour filling for the sides, back and sides. So what I've got going on right now, and I'll show y'all. And so I've done some light sanding on the top. You'll remember that I had some pencil lines on here that I needed to remove. And so I've already started on that. I've already started to do some sanding around the binding edge to give me a little rounded edge on that. And I'll show y'all what I'm doing there. I've just got some sandpaper like this. Let's go back up. All right, so when I'm doing the sanding on the top, I have a block. It's flat. I've rounded the edges off so I don't have any sharp edges on it. And then I have some sandpaper, and I'm using, this is about 150 grit. Which is sufficient to sort of clean the top up in the manner I need it. Now I'm just going about this lightly. I'm not trying to get this completely clear yet. It's already pretty decent. So all I'm doing is I'm going around the edge now, and this is just a piece of I think this is 80 grit, but you could use a 120, however fast you want to do this. And I'm just going around the edge, right on the edge of the binding, and I'm just rounding over the edge. I'm going to do this all the way around the guitar till I get the desired roundness that I want. And you'll notice that as I do this, there's going to be some sanding little wood. We'll just blow that off before we go on to the next step, because we do want to keep our workspace kind of clean at this stage. We don't want to get anything marring the top or the back before we seal them. I usually try to put a little extra round right here. This is where the arm rests on the guitar, and you definitely don't want a sharp edge there. And I'll go too crazy, you don't want to go through the binding, but a nice round edge does help for the comfort right there. Now, why blow it off? Well, because the color of the binding, if you leave that dust on the top, if you start to do your seal coat in there, that will tint and color the top, so we don't want that. I'm going to go around with my finger, and I'm just going to double check that I got this as round as I want it. And that feels pretty good, so I'm going to leave it like that. Okay. Now, obviously you want to do the other side too. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so I'll work on this side, and we'll come back in a few.